This happened when I was in high school. Freshman or sophomore, so about 14 or 15 years old, but still looked much younger. I still rode the city bus to school because, again, no school buses routed to my neighborhood. My mom could have dropped me off at the time, but she started work at 8 and my school started at 9, so I was not interested in being at school at around 7:15. That morning I get on the bus as usual. It's not empty but not full. I was a part of JROTC in high school and that day was uniform day, so I was wearing my uniform. If you've ever seen female military uniforms, you know they're the least flattering thing in the world. I include this description in case there's any chuckle fucks out there who think that what you're wearing when you get creeped on makes a difference. So I'm sitting in my seat surrounded by my big ass backpack and guitar case from my music class. Suddenly the stooge just materializes in front of me. I look up to see this guy, average height, sandy colored, thin hair, and drug skinny with a tweaker face. So he could be anywhere from 20 to 40. He stands awkwardly in front of me and then thrusts his arm out and holds a folded piece of paper in front of me. He gestured for me to take it, and it's so early in the morning, and I'm so confused that I take it and he walks away. I open it and read it. It's a note that he wrote me that said something along the lines of, "Hey, my name is Creep and I've been watching you for a while now, but I'm gonna be switching buses soon, so here's my phone number. Call me." And had a number written down. I can barely process what I've just read and I can feel his eyes burning into me. I arrange my stuff in the empty seats around me like a barrier, and when my stop comes I fly off the bus. I ran to the ROTC building where I would usually hang out before school. I burst into the building and basically tackled one of the ROTC instructors and clung to him, shaking like a leaf and crying, holding the note and talking incoherently. Now our instructor was obviously retired military. He took the note from me, read it, and got the most steely-eyed look. He sat me down in a chair and walked me over to the school phone on the table. He calmly dialed the number and that dumb, creepy motherfucker answered. My instructor asked if his name was Creep. The guy said yes. Then he quickly told him that he was my father and asked, "Why in the fuck did you, a grown man, give my 14-year-old child your number?" The creep basically just went, while my instructor released a stream of very experienced ex-military-based threats until he could hear the guy just about shit his pants. He finally told him to never contact me and hung up, and then gave me a huge smile and hug. I was smiling through my tears at that point, having listened to his tirade. I called my mom and told her what happened, and she came down to the school and we went and filed a police report. I told her I was never getting on a city bus again and I didn't care if I had to be at school 2 hours early. I wanted her to drop me off until I can drive. So that's what happened. That instructor was always my favorite teacher and I still go visit him even after graduating college. I imagine someday at my wedding he'll tell this story. It was truly crazy. This happened about a year ago, which would make me 22 at the time. While not a real looker, I do have a baby face and creeps or wannabe pedos come up to me on the regular. I look barely legal with makeup on and as a young teen on the regular. I'm about 5'3" and tend to wear somewhat baggy clothes, which adds to my childish looks, I guess. Around 9 p.m. I got on the bus I usually take and somehow managed to take a seat. At the next stop I glanced around to see who got on the bus, trying to see if there were any elderly people or just generally someone that seemed like they needed to take a seat more than me. That's when I noticed this plain-looking man. He was casually but decently dressed and somewhere between lean and slim. He had a short buzz cut, probably to hide the fact that he was starting to go bald, I imagine. But what I remember most vividly were his eyes. He was staring right at me. I started to feel uneasy, as most people divert their eyes after a time in situations like these. Now I know I tend to be a bit paranoid, so I try rationalizing right after I looked away and through the window. It could have just been that he was tired after a long day's work and wasn't looking at me but kind of through me without even realizing it. It's happened to me before. But there was something off about his look. It didn't seem blank, tired, or aloof. It was intense. I slowly looked back at him again, only to find him staring at me again with that same focus. I tried acting as if I was just looking around and then went back to looking to the window. I could see his reflection in the glass, so I kept an eye out for him. I didn't feel afraid, just uneasy, since there were a lot of people on the bus as well as quite a few stops until mine, and I was still convincing myself I was just being paranoid. The next stop came, and then the next, and then the next. He didn't get off. The only thing that had changed was there were significantly fewer people on the bus, and he took the seat 2 rows in front of mine. However, instead of facing forward as a normal person would, he was turned to the side, which gave him a good view of me and the doors. I thought about getting off a stop early and just walking home, but quickly discarded the idea since that could just provide him with more opportunity to corner me somewhere if he needed to try to follow me. So on to my next plan. I tried to act like I was oblivious to his intense staring. I'm not sure how convincing I was, since most of the time when I try to fake something I just get the perfect blank poker face. He didn't seem to change his behavior though, so I tried telling myself that at least I didn't get off the vibe that he was scaring me now. I was close to my stop and had decided to wait and then exit at the last possible moment. When the bus stopped and opened the doors, I looked out and then looked back again. I could see his body tense for a second. A few people started getting in and I saw him relax again. After the last person got on, I hurried up and out, a smile on my face. I thought I had fooled him. Unfortunately, he jumped up almost at the same time as me and managed to get off as well. Damn! Not only did I manage to lose him, but now he definitely knew I was trying to get away from him. I had no doubt he was following me now. I wasn't sure what to do. My house was just 300 meters away, but I didn't exactly want him to know where I live. Apart from that, as cliche as it sounds, I do live on a small, somewhat secluded street that isn't well lit, and not many people can be seen on it at night. It doesn't even have sidewalks, so that should give you the idea about the traffic on it. My last hope was the crossroads I needed to go over. Let me paint you a picture of it, since that is what saved me. So I got off the bus, walked down a bit, and crossed the street to my left. From there I had to wait for the green light and cross the street again, then I just go uphill for about 150 meters, and then on the first street to the left, 100 more meters and I was home. The thing was, when the light turns red for the cars on my left, it's still green for the cars coming from the right. After about, 15 seconds it turns red for them too. And then 5 to 10 more seconds the light turns green so that people on foot can pass. I couldn't be sure since it's not a small city or neighborhood I live on, but I hope he wasn't from around and that he wouldn't know about the traffic lights. So I tried playing it cool, pretending not to notice that he was constantly about 2 meters behind me like a freaking not-so-subtle shadow. As luck would have it, there wasn't too much traffic coming from my right, but there was some. I waited for the next car to come up, not too close and not too far, just enough for me to run across the street but to prevent him from following me directly behind. I remember hoping he wasn't from around here again before I started running. I guess he wasn't expecting that. I quickly glanced behind me and saw him starting to cross, but then backing up since there was still traffic coming from the right. This is when my luck doubled. A bus was heading my way to the stop that's right beneath the corner of my street. I'm pretty short, so I maneuvered my way through the crowd of people that just formed, hoping he'd lose track of me since most of those people were taller than me. I managed to get to my street, but figured he wasn't far behind. I didn't want to run up straight to my house since he could easily spot me. I decided to crouch between 2 parked cars right at the corner. I figured it was a good hiding spot. The street was dimly lit and I could peek through the car window, but he couldn't easily see me. After a few seconds, there he was, right at the fucking corner. I could see that he was breathing somewhat heavily and he just stood there. He peered into my street as if straining to see if I was somewhere in the distance. Even though it was dark, I was so scared he could somehow see me. Then he looked up ahead of him with the same expression. I didn't dare move, and after what seemed like an eternity, he decided to go up instead of on my street, but I still didn't move. I kept thinking what a stupid decision he'd made. There was no way I could have gone up fast enough for him to see me if I had went there. I was afraid he'd realize that and come back. After a while, I honestly don't know how long, it could have just been seconds, I figured it would be stupid for me to wait for him to come back, so I just rushed home. I made sure everything was locked after I got in and was never so glad to see my dad home. In hindsight, I could have just called my dad and asked him to pick me up at the bus stop. I have no idea why that thought never crossed my mind. It would have been the smarter thing to do, but regardless, I'm just glad I'm okay and he never caught up to me. During my freshman year in college, I had to commute for 30 to 45 minutes from home to the campus and vice versa. Before the start of the semester, my parents and I checked out dormitories near the campus, but it was fairly expensive and I wasn't really keen on sharing a room with two other people. My mother, who was an accountant, calculated the estimated monthly expenses I would have if I got a room versus staying at home and traveling. The latter showed a lesser value, so a decision was made. And honestly, I could stand a few hours traveling than socialize with my would-have-been roommates. But kidding aside, I didn't really mind this arrangement. Sure, I'd wake up at 5 in the morning so I could go to my 7:30 class without being late. I also used the travel time to cram notes and do assignments I didn't get to finish or even start. It took some practice to get my handwriting eligible with all the bumps and humps from car rides, but by the time I got the hang of it, my blockmates treated me like a boss. But that's beside the point. This incident happened around 6:30 in the evening. I couldn't remember the exact date, but I am certain that it happened on a Friday. The campus I attended had a civilian day during Fridays, while the rest of the weekdays we were required to wear our school uniforms. I was wearing a cute light pink top with little ruffles on the neck and paired it off with jeans and low-heeled shoes of a similar color. When I ride buses, I had a preferred seat. It's the seat right behind the driver. I was paranoid with morbid thoughts back then, since I had witnessed a nasty car accident that had caused 22 casualties. I was thinking that if we ever get into an accident, the driver would instinctively steer the bus away, which would make me feel safer. So I stepped inside the bus and saw a handful of passengers sitting on their respective seats and minding their own business. I was relieved to see that my preferred seat was unoccupied, so I went there and settled myself, plugging my earphones on and gazing at the window. I barely noticed when a guy sat beside me. I just saw him on my peripheral vision. My phone vibrated. My mom was asking what I'd like for dinner. I quickly shot a reply and placed it back on my backpack, which was on my lap. The guy used his jacket as a blanket and covered his folded arms over his chest. I didn't think much of it since it was getting dark out and the poor guy must have been tired. But then I felt something brush against my right side, causing me to flinch. It was his knuckles. I tried to assure myself that it was just an accident. His eyes were closed after all. I shifted in my seat, trying to make some distance between us. I'm kind of lanky, so it wasn't a difficult feat. The bus had finally moved and the man handing out the ticket started to make his round. The man asked me where I was headed before giving me the corresponding ticket, and when he asked the guy beside me, he said the same city. I started to get the weird vibe right there, but I just chalked it up as coincidence. I was starting to get uncomfortable since I counted 4 times his knuckles brushed my arm. I was getting really agitated. The 4th time he brushed against me, his knuckles touched my breast. I was practically gritting my teeth at that point. I decided to hug my backpack so he wouldn't accidentally brush against my breast again. I thought that he'd stop by this, but no. He was forcing his closed fist on my side, and that was when I was certain of his intentions. No matter how much I blocked his hand with my back, he would wedge his way stubbornly. The jerk. I may be an introvert, but once I get pissed, I am very vocal with my thoughts. I shifted my seat once again and saw that he was wide awake and a knowing smirk on his face. I fought off the urge to scratch that smug look. I took a deep breath and took off my headphones before loudly saying, "If you're trying that hard to touch a girl with a flat chest, then I feel sorry for you." All heads turned to our direction. The car calmly stopped on a waiting shed, and while I was wondering why the fuck I had to blurt out those words, the jerk just took off running. He didn't even pay for fare and we were nowhere near our destination. There was a stunned silence, but then the driver shook his head and started grunting, looking at the sliding door where the jerk had just gotten off. A fellow passenger, a sweet old lady, asked me if I'm okay, and I just nodded mutely. I may have chased away a maniac, but I had also managed to embarrass myself. Thankfully, there were only a few passengers inside. The driver told me to put my bag beside me and they won't charge me for occupying the seat. I was grateful for that gesture. The next 15 minutes had been uneventful, and when I jokingly told the story to my parents during dinner, it was then I had realized the full magnitude of the situation. I was sexually harassed. Some dude forced his way even when I tried to stop his advances. I had a fitful sleep that night, thinking of morbid thoughts. What if I didn't speak up and he got off on the same stop as me? What if he had an intention to do horrible things to me? What if I died that day? I was overreacting, I know, but it had been a few weeks since I fully recovered from that trauma. My father had to put up with me and drove me to and from school until I stopped being so paranoid. That was when I started a job. I prioritized having a car of my own. Now I don't use the buses anymore.